What's up, y'all? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. I actually never seen that intro before. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Got made me a little nervous. Like, what's happening? But there it is. There, the team put it together, and I like it. It's really, really good. I want to introduce you to Doug. I had him here before, so you're probably going to remember him because he was so much fun to have. And we talked about his life. We talked about things that he's been doing in sales. He's been working since he was 3 years old. I remember the story. He was sweeping his dad's floors for like 25 cents a week. It was crazy. But he is now the CEO of Sales and creator of Sales Strategies Academy. Is that right? Sales Strategies Academy?
The 1% Earners Academy. Yep, Sales
1% Earners Academy. There you go. Okay, so I've actually been reading his book too, which is really good. So it's Win-Win Selling. And I was telling him before we got on that I'm really enjoying it because I always never really saw myself as a salesperson, right? But I am a coach, and when you're a coach, that's what you're doing. You're acquiring clients, right? Otherwise, you're not coaching. You're just sitting. So, Doug, it is really, really good to see you again, and I'm glad that you came back because I wanted to get into more of the nitty-gritties of sales, right? Because I think that's one of the challenges that I'm seeing a lot, especially with people that I speak to. I work with women in my coaching program. And one of the fears or the objection is always like, I don't know how to sell. I don't know how to close. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I try to tell them that they sell themselves every day. And at least it's the way I think, that sales is really a conversation, honestly. But you have to come at it in a very authentic way. So Doug, before we get all into all of that, how have you been and how is everything going?
I'm great. Everything's moving along as it's supposed to, and
good.
It's always one of those things. We always say, "Oh, geez, I wish it was a little bit more ahead here, or I wasn't so stressed out here, or whatever." But hey, that's life, right?
That is life. That is life.
So things are going really well. There's just no complaints whatsoever. We finally are having good weather in New Hampshire, where I am.
Good.
It's been raining. I don't know. It seems like 2/3 or better of the days have been raining. So yeah, been
send
a lot
some of that down south. We haven't had any rain. Send it down here.
We'd be happy to export it down to Texas, and as long as you export some sunshine up here. So
yeah, I hear you. So I'm really excited that you're here. I wanted to dig into what it is you do with your clients and then kind of go from there, because I'm sure that you've been seeing a shift. You've been doing sales for a long time, right? So I want to talk about the difference nowadays. Like, how do we speak to clients nowadays? Because one of the things that I've noticed the most, being a coach, I am a client. I do have a coach myself. But one of the things I've noticed is the inundation, right, of information. And so I think what's happening is we are getting overloaded, and now we're objecting to everything. So now everything is uncomfortable. Everything is fear-based, right? And so I was reading your book, and I love the part where you talked about that. Because you said on page 20, you said, how many types of objections are there? And I would say there's only one objection, and that's discomfort. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was literally thinking about that this week. And then I was reading your book, and I saw that, and I'm like, that is so, I want you to talk about that. I want you to talk about that, because we always think that it's something against us, right? We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to feel like we're not good enough, right? But maybe it's the discomfort that they're feeling. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, it's not usually us. And if it is us, then we've got a bigger problem, right? Because the reality is, if it is us, then we need to fix that. So, if you can find that out pretty quickly, Neena, as long as somebody is willing to, like, if you lose a sale or you don't get the deal for whatever reason, interview the person at the end and say, hey, I'm always trying to get better. Would you tell me where I didn't make it? What didn't make the grade here, right? And don't hold back. And if they say something like, well, you're rude and abruptive, you interrupt me throughout the process, you're whatever, right? You write it down. And so if you find out, hey, you do 3 or 4 of those and everybody's saying, you're interrupting when you shouldn't, et cetera, then it is the person that is actually speaking. So, but most of the time, it's not that. Most of the time it is, they are uncomfortable with something. Discomfort. An objection is always a discomfort, usually rooted in fear. I've very rarely seen it not rooted in fear. Now, they're not going to tell you that, right? Neena, they're not going to come in and go, hey, I'm so afraid if I make this decision that XYZ is going to happen. They very rarely will say that. They'll say things emotionally. So,
right.
Or they'll say something that has nothing to do with actually what the objection is. But as the people who are communicating with people, and remember, if we're selling, we're communicating.
Right.
And if I just thought of something my wife said to me a little while ago. But it's like, if we're communicating, we must communicate with human beings. And, sometimes there's even gender gaps, right? So there's, I'm a guy, my daughters are girls. My wife is a girl. And, every once in a while, she reminded me today, she's like, you're thinking like a man. So when you're speaking to women, you've got to think like a woman. And I'm like, okay, that's really hard, right? Because, women think circular. Women will ask more questions than men. And sometimes men are like, let's just get to the point, right? But if we do that, we're apt to invoke the objection right there. And so we're communicating with somebody. So anytime we hear an objection, the first thing that I teach people to do is take a breath, relax. Right? I think you're getting into the rules of the book, right? And rule number 1 will be relax, breathe. Because if you don't, our natural tendency is going to want to be to solve that, whatever they're saying. And a lot of times, whatever they're saying is not even the true meaning. In the book, I teach, how do you get to the true it, what I call the true it, the real it. And the real it is, what is the real issue? And this all goes back to our childhood, Neena, really, when it comes down to it, like how we were raised, how we protected ourselves, how we thrived. Right? If somebody thrived as a bully, for example, that's how they survived and thrived. They're going to try the bully play. And so what can you do with the bully? You could stand up to the bully and you do it respectfully. If you come top down on the bully's not going to like you because now they're no longer able to be the bully. Right? So if you come from a place where somebody has come from a place where they've always been demure, they're just kind and quiet, and we raise our voice and we're right in their face and we're doing that, well, guess what? They're going to object. And they may not even know why, though. But the reality is what's going on inside them is, I'm uncomfortable. There's a discomfort. Danger, Will Robinson back in the old series of whatever the heck, Lost in Space, right? For those of you who are under 40 years old, you may not even know what I'm talking about. But it's an old show. Check it out. It's pretty cool. So that's what an objection is. It's really something they're saying, I'm uncomfortable. I have something that's bothering me. But they don't express it that way. They'll say, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't, I tried something like this in the past before. I don't know if you're the right fit for me. They'll say things like that. We have to then go through and I outline it in the book. I mean, I can go through it here if you want, but it's pretty much a step-by-step questioning process without being death by questions, right? And we've got to step back, breathe, relax. We have to say, okay, what might be going on here? what might be the 2 or 3, 4 possibilities that might be going on here? We want to get really curious about that. As curious as we were when we were children and something came new to us and we were like, how do we figure this out? Like I've seen kids that are, taking a cell phone, for example, and they're learning how to use that cell phone. They're not like going, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure because I can't figure it out. They're just like in there doing the thing. And then they're teaching us adults what the cell phone does, right?
Right.
So, and in our adults, we go, oh, I'm too old to learn this, or my gosh, this is too difficult, or whatever. That's our objection. Really, what we're saying is we don't want to look like a fool, in front of other people. And one thing I can tell people when it comes to money or it comes to looking foolish, people will forego their financial gain. So if you've got a lot of coaches and things on this line, they will forego their financial gain to make sure they don't look foolish. They will protect the integrity of them looking bad in the public eye or to the private eye, i.e. their spouse or whatever. They will do that, and it will far supersede any loss of potential gain of money. So if you're just constantly talking about money, you're like, hey, I want to make $25,000 a month. I can help you get there. I want to make $2 million a year. I can help you get there. And they're pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. It's not about the money.
Right.
It might be they don't have the money and actually to invest, but that's another issue. The real issue is I'm uncomfortable and I want to tell you that I don't have the funds. And so we've got to let them come forth with that and get to the real it so that we can handle what the real issue is.
You're talking about energy too.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because it's about us like really communicating with one another and realizing if that other person, even maybe they're not saying it, but their body language is speaking it.
Yeah.
Right? Their facial expressions are speaking it. And we should know how to read the room. We should know how to read the room. And so I have been on calls where people just get very aggressive. I don't like it. I'm a very forward person though. Like once I start to feel uncomfortable, I'm like, okay, your aggression is making me uncomfortable.
Right.
And so they're like, I just don't jive with that. Like, just be authentic, be real. And then let's get, maybe I have more of a masculine energy because I always like to just get to the point. Right. I don't like all the fluff and all the, that's just the way I am.
Sure.
Right. So what do you do though, when somebody, is objecting, right? You said, take a breath. So that was part one. How do you get to be, because I know this is what you teach all of your people, right? How do you get to be that top 1%, in sales? How do we do that? Like, where do we start? Because a lot of people who are on the call or listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs. They are. And a lot of them are consultants and coaches, and they're in that space, right? So you're speaking to the right audience right now. And I'm sure a lot of them are like glued to their ear glued to it, because I think that's one of our biggest challenges. And Doug, let's be real. There's just so many fake people teaching fake courses that they've gotten with AI, right? And that's another big thing right now, right? Is that people are creating courses that are all AI based courses. But there's no experience behind it. So I'm speaking to a pro right now, so I'm going to need you.
Yeah. And that's the challenge too. I agree, because, it's easy to figure it out, Neena, right? Because it's like, can you tell me your clientele list that you had in the past?
Right.
And I just did this with somebody and they said, no, that is proprietary. We don't share it. And I'm like, you don't have to give me names. Give me some case studies. Right. And they're like, well, I can't share that either. It's like, because you don't have them. That's really the message that comes through. Now, listen, I sign non-disclosures with some of my clientele, but they're not restricting me to use their company names most of the time, right? So I can literally say, on the big end, I've worked with Procter & Gamble, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Intuit was one of my clients, CBS Television, the president of CBS, right? So I can use those type of things, but I can also use companies that people have never heard of.
Right.
And I've trained, I don't know how many, I mean, it's well over thousands at this point of coaches and consultants on how to sell it to be into the top 1%. Awesome. And the reality is that there are a lot of people out there who simply don't know what they're talking about, but or never made any money other than being a coach, right? Or being a consultant. And so at least the money they're telling other people that they can make. I just got an email through for somebody that's like, we're taking these top 5 people to the top 7-figure thing. And I was reading and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is somebody who asked me to borrow $25,000 because they couldn't pay their rent.
Right.
And so it's like, that doesn't make them a bad person. It just makes them not qualified to actually be doing what they're saying. So so there's a couple of questions going on. One, how do we actually pick the right coach or consultant, right? I mean,
yes.
Do they actually have life's experience? I mean, and I can say one of the reasons I teach people how to be in the top 1%, how to think and act and be that way, is because I've been there now multiple times. Right? So I don't have this credibility feeling like I have to fake it till I make it. Right. And before I got there, I used to tell people, listen, I can get you the top 3%, right? Because I've done it.
That's awesome.
Not only once or twice, but I've done, a dozen times. Right. So, but I can't take you at that point in my life and say, I can teach you how to be in a 7-figure earners bracket. I can say I could get you in a 7 figures revenue bracket on my own. I have coached people on multi-7, multi-8, even multi-9, obviously Intuit's a pretty big company. So I can say that I've done that, but truthfully, I can't tell them, hey, I know what it's like to net $7.6 million because I've never done it.
Right.
So I think the first place to start is getting truthful. You asked, how do you start to be a 1% earner? And I don't mean subjectively honest. I mean truthful. Okay.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Well, truthful is objective. Subjective is honesty. I can say, and I was a professional musician, right? And I did work with Boston, and I did work with Aerosmith, and I did work with Billy Joel's band, and I did work with the members of the Eagles and things like that. But I wasn't on stage playing with them as a professional musician. I was selling them music equipment. Right. And even though I was a decent musician, and even though I went to Berklee College of Music, which is a reasonably known music school, right? I cannot say I was, Billy up on stage with Billy Joel. I can certainly, I work with David Brown, the guitar player from Billy Joel, and but it's not one of those things that. So we've got to get truthful, right?
Yeah.
And tell people what the truth is.
Right.
And then you don't worry about whether they accept you or not at that point, because you are what you are at that moment.
Right. But that's the thing, like when you are what you are, you can fully come in, you can fully come in, and then now you can really teach them something because you're not faking it. You're not trying to make it up as you go. Right. And I couldn't agree with that more. And the other thing is, people know when you're bullshitting, just be real. Some people are just giving it to you and they're and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so phony right now. I don't even believe a word that's coming out of your mouth. You usually can feel that energy, usually. Yeah. Unless we are going in with a greedy heart to begin with, right? So unless we're going in because Doug said he's going to give me a 7-figure plan and by Tuesday, I'm going to be a 7-figure earner. And if I'm going in blindly because I'm being, driven by my ego and by greed and I don't want to see anything else, well, then I might fall for it, But it's like with my coaching program, for example, I teach women how to transcend shame and get rid of unwanted behaviors. I've never, ever in my coaching program have told someone I'm going to have them making $30,000 in the next 90 days. Never. Now, can they? Of course they can, because they're getting rid of a lot of garbage and they get to focus on their business. But I'm not going to say that because I'm not going to guarantee something that I haven't seen, right? Or that I haven't, really focused in on making somebody $30,000 in the next 30 days. I'm not doing that. But I can help you to get rid of shame. I can help you to learn forgiveness. I can help you to get rid of negative behaviors, right? So that part of it I can show up for because I've been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
But I love what you're saying, because this is true. And if we come to a place where all of us come to truth of ourselves, it is freeing. It is so freeing,
Yeah.
because you're not faking it. You're being authentically you, right?
And yeah. And the thing is a lot of times, so, and I'll get back to the 1% thing in a minute, but a lot of times people are faking it because they want the money.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
And so the reason they fake it is because frankly, they don't have enough prospects to talk to. So they're limited on the amount of people that they're talking with.
Right.
And since they're limited on the amount of people, they're playing scarcity. And so if you truly want to be a 1% earner, you got to start.
Hey there, my amazing community of straight talkers. I just wanted to give a quick announcement, because I wanted to introduce you to a transformative life coaching program that I have made exclusively for women. I want them to break free from shame and embrace their true potential so that they can build that life and business that they have always wanted. Now, our transformational coaching will guide you. We will help you. We will uncover your passion, your goals, and will develop your roadmap to success. Visit me at neenaperez.com, and you can join an amazing community of women that are on the same trajectory as you, because I want you to create that life and business you deserve and transcend that shame and unwanted behaviors. So don't wait any longer. Visit neenaperez.com and let's embark on this journey together. Now back to the show.
Somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And there's no shame in wanting to be a 1% earner. That's another thing you got to get truthful about, because
Right.
when you become a 1% earner, your friends that are friends today, many of them won't be your friends.
Won't be your friends. That's true.
Right? Because
That's
you're
very
gonna one must change so much internally in order to embrace that ability
Wow.
to receive, if you will, in that regard. And there's a lot of mind trash that's gonna have to go in the process. And
I love it.
I know this from personal experience and working with lots of great people. I mean, I just had he was the number one rep and in the top 5 for 10 years for Apple computers, right? So
Wow.
he was on my podcast, and it's like we had a really candid conversation. Well, you don't stay in the top 5 for 10 years being I would call it untruthful to yourself or untruthful to your clientele. It just doesn't happen. Right. So, and the other thing is just to understand that you're never going to be a 1%er in most cases in 30 days. Now, you might get lucky. I mean, I've had people do that. I mean, I've had people sell and get, 6-figure commissions in, a very short period of time. So it might work, right? But like as you said, Neena, earlier, you might be able to get rid of the shame and the guilt and all of these things that you're doing, and all of a sudden they're sitting on a multi-million-dollar payday that it just opens up. But that's not the normal.
Right. Exactly.
Right? It normally takes people between a year and 2 years to actually get rid of all of the things that need to happen and learn the skills that need to happen. But is it worth 2 years of study to make, to be in the top 1% earners in your area? Let's say you're in, I don't know, Connecticut, that's darn close to $1 million a year, right? So, yeah, I mean, if you're in Great Britain listening to this, I believe it's around 15,000 British pounds a month. You're in the top 1% of earners. So, is it worth that to have that? And that's where we must get really truthful, because I talk to people all week, sometimes by email or sometimes, on social media or sometimes verbally like we're doing. And they'll tell me, hey, I'm here. I want to be 4 times this in the next 18 months of my life. And then it'll be like, all right, well, here's an assignment to go get ready for whatever you're looking to do. And then they'll come back and they'll say, oh my gosh, my job got in the way. My boating got in the way. My got in the way. Right. And it's like, so I question them, and anybody in my company will question them. What's your truthful goal? You said this. Is it really truthful? And it's like, yes, that's what I want. No, the question is, are you committed to do what is needed in order to get there?
There you go. There you go.
Right?
That's
Because
good.
that's the truth I'm talking about. That's step number one. You just got to get really clear. And by the way, for everyone listening, there is absolutely, you use the word shame, Neena. No shame in not wanting to be a 1% earner. Okay.
Right.
None.
Right.
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 I know people who are in the top 10% of earners, or even in the top 20% earners. And frankly, they're super happy.
Right. Right.
I just read an article the other day. Oh my gosh, I love this. It was the gentleman's 105 years old. And
Wow.
he's still out there doing his, daily work. He's so cute. He's got he rode his Harley Davidson motorcycle until he was 91. Right?
Wow.
I mean, to me, I'd rather have that than be dead
Right.
at 70 from stress. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that to me, the second thing is you got to get truthful of what a 1% earner is to you.
Right.
Because it's not necessarily, you have to be in the top 1% of your industry or your geographic, right? You can have your own personal goals that make you a 1% earner, because 1% is, even though we teach how to make it monetarily, it's so much more than that, because it is about your whole life. It's rounded about your whole life. Like, I have the ability to pass on lessons to my daughters that they would never get in business school, right? I mean, they just wouldn't, because it's book smarts versus being out there on the in the game every single day. So it just depends on what you find it.
Can I question you on?
By all means.
Okay, what is a 1% earner? What is that?
To me, I define it based on geographic region, because a lot of people are like, what is a 1% earner? And I'm like, all right, so if you live in West Virginia in the United States, it's like $360,000 a year. Right. If you live in South Africa, it's going to be a different number. If you live in Brazil, it's going to be a different number. So, I live in the state of New Hampshire. It's, roughly around $700,000 a year, puts you in the top 1%. So, and then there's the top 1%, and then there's the top, 20% of the 1%, right? I mean, we're talking about guys like Jeff Bezos and, those type of people.
Yeah. Right.
So it never ends for a 1%er, but the question is whether it's 1% or not, it's an analogy really when it comes down to it, right? It's like double your sales in 12 months, right? I mean, it's nice to double your sales in 12 months, and that's great if you do it. But for most people, they're not really looking to double the sales. They're not really looking to be in the top 1%. But if I can teach you how to think and act, and if you want to be that, you can. That is the ultimate power, because it goes back to like Henry Ford, years ago when he was on trial, and they were saying, you're Henry, you don't know what you're saying, they had him there, and he said, well, here's what I do know. I know I have enough money to be able to get done what I need to get done. And if you took it all away from me today, within 2 years, I'll have it back, because I know how.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I was just going to say that, because you're right, Doug. I mean, when you're talking about, teaching them how to think, act, and have that mindset of a 1%er, that can't be taken from you. Right? So you might be able to have that 6-figure job leave, or you might lose something in the stocks or whatever. But if you have the know-how and the knowledge, you're going to get it back. You're going to get it back if you put the effort in, right? So tell me about how you do that with them, because you were talking about the top 1%ers. So when somebody comes to you now, do you work with individuals and companies, or just companies, or how are you structuring that?
Well, I used to do all of the above. So what we've been doing lately is moving it more into a training process for anyone. So we've developed what we're calling the 1% Academy. Okay. And the 1% Academy is come in here and we'll teach you how to think, act, and be like a 1% earner. Awesome. And we'll hold you to high accountability standards. So it's not for for the people who are like, oh, not for the faint of heart. Right. Because, if they don't show up doing their homework, I literally will stop in the middle and go, Joe, what happened?
Right. Right.
Right. Like what, so,
I love it.
I've done a couple of trial runs on this and, everyone has told me it's worth, 2.5 times what I was going to ask for it. And which is always a good sign. Right.
Yeah.
But they also told me this, Doug, we love you, but we hate you. Right. Because they don't get away with anything. It's like,
Right. Right.
so, and because, it does require, so how do we do it? You were working on, not only are we working on skill sets on how to, prospect, market, sell, and conversationally converse. We're also working on triggers that you were referring to before. And, not as deeply as you do, Neena, because you're doing it in a different way than we are, but we're bringing forth the awareness of it and interrupting those triggers. Because I've found, and then helping them reinstall new patterns through the process, right? So, and so, because, if we as a seller, if I was a seller and I thought, my gosh, this is so expensive, right? And I grew up in that environment, like with everything was like, it just one, or a lot of things were like, wait, we can't afford that. That's for rich people. We can't, what do you mean you go buy a Tiffany lamp?
Yeah.
You don't do that. I mean, that's dumb, right? Or, you know what? A mid-sized car is all you're ever going to get. And that's because we're mid-sized car peoples, or, or whatever the lesson was. And, and we
Whatever
all
the
have
program
lessons,
is. Right. Yep. Yep.
If you then go and you're like, you're a coach, let's say, because you are, and
Right.
you people listening are coaches, because some of them are, and some of them are consultants, but now they want to ask for $130,000 for their services. And in their brain, they're going, my gosh, that is so expensive. Like, I hope they say yes, but well, right then and there, they're going to invoke objections.
Yep.
Because they're going to be setting language patterns up that they don't even realize are there. And they're going to lose the deal. Not always, but sometimes, right? And sometimes you get lucky. Like the first time I asked for $35,000 a month for a consulting package. They said, well, how much is it? And I said, well, it's $35,000 a month. It's 6 months. And the business owner went like this. Sounds fair. Okay, let's do it. Do you want to check
What were you feeling inside?
Like when I said it, because I had never asked for that kind of money for a consulting job before.
Right.
When I said it, it was like, I felt like my fingers crossed,
Right.
my toes crossed, and my kneecaps crossed. I mean, my eyes were crossed, everything. I was like, but I wanted to keep testing. And this is one of the things that 1% earners learn to do. You keep testing.
Yep.
And, because I've sold $425,000 consulting packages for 6 or 7 months, right? So it didn't start out there, but that's part of the growth that we go through. And now when somebody asks me, I'm like, it's 180 grand. It's nothing. Right. It's like, because my brain just goes there. Like,
right. Because you've already broken that glass ceiling that you had. You already broke through it. Yeah.
And you can't, and your mind can't expand back.
Right.
So your mind could go, hey, look, I want to cut back. And instead of earning $1 million this year, I want to earn 400. One mind can do that. But you know what? I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to work less. I'm going to do whatever. Right. Like, I can't even, like, 350 is my number. I can't even think below that anymore.
Right.
And it's not because I'm arrogant. I didn't grow up like that. My mom, she used to look for quarters between the sofa cushions sometimes to see if we could make up, food.
I remember she used to sell Avon.
Yeah. My mom sold Avon, right? And so, thank you for remembering. And she was really good at it, right? So it was one of those things that I didn't grow up this way. And I had to kind of break through some of the stigma and the barriers and things like that. But it was that and learning the skill sets. And I will tell everybody on this line that's listening to this, it's much easier, way easier to learn from somebody, and I'm going to plug myself at this point, like
Please
me, who's
do. Yeah.
been there, done it, and can teach you what and what not to do, versus doing it the way I did it, which was just get out there in the street and start learning, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know about mentors until I actually got into my late 30s.
Same.
Right. So
Me too.
I was whacking away at the tree and not realizing, oh my gosh, there's a thing called a chainsaw if I really want to take this tree down, or, or there's a tree company that will come and do it for me. Like, I never even could think that way. Right. So, and I remember I went into my first sales training program, which is a thing called Sandalish Sales. And they talked about this submarine thing. Right. And I liked the title of the book. It was like, this guy wrote in, you can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. And I was like, wow, that's a really great title. So I'm like, I read this thing and I'm like, I have no idea what this man's talking about, but closing the doors and the submarine, and I'm like, whatever. So I'm like, here I go. I spent $4,000 back then to take a course, and I go there every morning at 7:00 or whatever we were there. And I'm sitting there going, some of this makes sense, some of this doesn't, right? But that's sometimes how you're going to feel in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And, so I hope I'm answering your question. Step one is getting truthful and being really clear that you're committed to doing this.
Right.
And if you're not, it's okay. Come up where you want to be, because you can think and act that way. And that creates massive leverage. So you could do it on less time, less money, less hours. It's called quality of life if somebody wants it.
That's good. And I think that, for those of you who are listening, I think Doug is really just showing you well, first his expertise, and also the fact that you can expand where you are right now, but you're going to have to do it from a place of truth and honesty, because that's the only way. I think, Doug, it's the only way to even work with you to begin with, right? Because I think if you're going to come to doing the program, which I want you to give us all of that right now, but if you're going to come to Doug's program to work with him, then at least come correct. And what I mean by that is at least come knowing that it's going to be some work, that it's not an overnight magic pill, and that you're going to have to really show up for you. You have to show up for you, because Doug is going to just give you guys all of the knowledge and wisdom, but what you're going to do with it is on you, right? So Doug, I'm so glad you came on. I'm so glad we had this conversation, and I'm so glad that you are as authentic and real as you are. That's why I wanted you back. So I don't invite too many people back, but when I like someone and I like their energy and I like what they bring to my audience, I have to have you back. So thank you so much. And thank you for your book, because honestly, I'm reading through it and I really am resonating with a lot of it. So before I let you wrap up though and go, I do want you to plug yourself again, right? So let us know how people can work with you, how they contact you, all of that stuff, because it's time to get our stuff right. And we got to work with somebody who's a pro. And now with some of these, kids that are like 18 telling you that they can sell the moon, the star, and everything because they got an AI program. I like to work with people who have been in the trenches. That's how we learn. So, Doug, how do we get in contact with you and do all that?
Yeah, well, I think the first step, if people are interested in learning more, and Neena, I don't know if you know this or not, but I put out another ebook, right? Just recently.
No, I didn't know that.
Called The Nonstop 1% Earner. Kind of goes into the psychology and philosophy of what it takes to be one. So awesome. Just came out just in the last couple of weeks. So that's why I don't think you're aware of it. So they could go to www.ceosalesstrategies, plural, sales and strategies is plural, .com/1 PE. So ceosalesstrategies.com/1 PE, and PE stands for 1% earner. So that, I think if they go there, firstly, they can download the book. They'll be getting information from us. We don't overwhelm you, by the way. We send something like once a week, because we're a business to business company a lot of times, and you're not going to send this to CEOs and, do what some of the, internet marketers do. Like you were talking about the younger ones, especially, hitting you with 4 or 5 emails a day is crazy. So
it is.
So that would be one way. They can contact me at Doug Brown123. That is my LinkedIn. Or if they want to send an email in with a question, send it into You Matter, YOUMATTER, at ceosalesstrategies.com.
I love
And
that.
my staff or myself will reach back out. We do answer all inquiries, so feel free to do that. And if they want to be part of the 1% Academy, say, hey, I want to talk about it, right? I mean, we're going to be running a bunch of marketing and campaigns out on this.
Oh, great.
And we're going to probably kick something off toward the end of this year. If they want to be in on the founders group, there'll be some special, reasons to be in there.
That's awesome.
And things. Now, it's not really a founders group because I've done this 2 or 3 times already, but it's the first official kickoff of this formally, if you will. And that's how they can get a hold of me, Neena.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for coming and hanging out and giving us all those little nuggets of wisdom. I truly appreciate your time. Thank you, Doug.
You are so welcome. And I'm
Thank
so grateful you had me back on here. So thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, we even went overtime. I could talk to you forever, ever. All right, guys, make sure that you guys get in contact with Doug. I'm going to link all of the information he just said below. So that way you can make sure that you contact him, go on, get the ebook. Make sure you are looking at the program, and maybe you can be one of the founders, or, at least be a part of the program, because I think that it is time for you guys to really get real about what it is you want to do and who it is you want to reach in a way that holds you accountable, so that someone who knows what they're doing can actually hold you accountable to what it is you say you want to do, and not just have one of these programs where you sign on and you never hear from anyone again, because all of you know that we've all done it, where we have put ourselves into programs and regret it so much because we have gotten nothing out of it. This is not that. So make sure that you get in contact with Doug. This is Neena Perez. This is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff, so that you can spread the word. And let's get our sales going, right, Doug? Let's get our sales going. Until next time.